Two farmers, same hatchery, same breed, same day. They shake hands at the hatchery gate, load their birds into separate vehicles, and drive off to their farms, just a few kilometers apart. 6 weeks later, one farmer walks into his house and smiles. Uniform, well-muscled birds moving confidently across the litter. He pulls one onto the scale, 2.8 kilograms. Another, 2.9. He's ready for market. The other farmer walks into his house on the exact same day and sees a completely different story. Smaller birds, uneven sizes, some barely past 2 kilograms. He's going to need another week, maybe 2 or even 3. That's extra feed cost, delayed income, and the worst part, he has no idea why. How is that even possible? Same genetics, same starting age, same 6 weeks, 2 completely different outcomes. Most people watching this right now are thinking, feed, and they're not entirely wrong, but they are missing the bigger picture. If it were simply about feed, every farmer who bought the same brand would grow identical birds, and we all know that doesn't happen. Broiler growth is determined by a chain of factors, and a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. A farmer can have perfect feed and still produce disappointing birds. By the end of this video, you will understand the exact factors that separate fast-growing broilers from birds that never reach their potential. And I promise you, at least 2 of those factors are things you have never connected to growth before. Let's start at the very beginning, because that's where everything is decided. The first 7 days of a broiler's life account for a disproportionate share of its final market weight. Think about that, 42 days of life, and the first 7, barely 17% of the total, can determine whether that bird reaches 3 kilograms or stalls below 2 and refuses to move. Here's why. When a day-old chick arrives at your farm, its digestive system is not yet fully functional. The chick is still absorbing its yolk sac, its internal food supply from the egg. That window closes fast. Within the first 24 to 48 hours, the digestive system needs to be activated by real feed and real water. If that activation is delayed, something happens that you cannot fix later. Scientists call it depressed gut development. Farmers just call it slow birds. Whatever you call it, the result is the same: a bird that starts behind and never fully catches up. The most critical variable in that first week is temperature. A cold chick is not just an uncomfortable chick. It is a bird burning energy to survive instead of burning energy to grow. Every calorie spent on warmth is a calorie not spent building the muscle you're trying to sell. Ideal brooding temperature sits between 32 and 35 degrees Celsius under the heat source. But the most reliable thermometer isn't on the wall. It's the chicks themselves, huddled tightly, too cold, pressed against the walls, too hot, spread evenly, moving freely, peeping softly. You've got it right. Feed and water must be available within 2 hours of arrival. Chicks that arrive after a long journey are dehydrated and stressed. A chick that drinks in the first 2 hours will almost certainly eat. A chick that doesn't find water in time becomes lethargic, and a lethargic chick on day 1 becomes a lighter bird on day 42. But here's the uncomfortable truth. I've seen farmers spend thousands on premium feed while unknowingly making a mistake in week 1 that no feed on earth could fix. The first week is not about nutrition, it is about activation. Get activation right, and the birds are set up to express their full genetic potential. Get it wrong, and you've already decided the outcome, whether you know it yet or not. But the surprising part comes next, because most farmers are obsessing over the wrong thing entirely. Feed is almost always the first suspect when broiler growth disappoints, and sometimes it is the culprit, but not in the way most farmers think. One of the most common reasons for poor growth on farms that appear to be doing everything right is not the feed itself. It is the transition between feeds. Broiler nutrition is designed in phases. Starter for the first 10 to 14 days. Grower through the middle weeks. Finisher approaching market. Each phase delivers a specific protein-to-energy ratio matched to the bird's changing biology. Starter feed typically runs 22 to 24% crude protein because rapid organ and muscle development demands it. Switch from starter to grower too early, at 10 days instead of 14, and the birds experience what nutritionists call a nutritional gap. The protein drops before the bird's metabolism has made its first major shift. Growth slows, feed conversion worsens, and the farmer on week 3 thinks his feed is poor quality, when in reality he changed it too soon. Stay on starter too long, and elevated protein stresses the developing kidneys. More is not always better. The bird needs the right nutrition at the right time. Here's what might surprise you most. 2 bags of feed can both label 22% protein and produce completely different results. One uses high-quality fish meal and soybean meal, excellent amino acid profiles, high digestibility. The other hits 22% using lower quality ingredients that the bird cannot fully absorb. Same number on the bag. Completely different growth on your flock. This is why switching feed brands frequently, chasing lower prices, introduces variability that shows up as uneven flock performance. Birds respond to consistency, and feed wastage, which can consume 10 to 15% of your total feed cost in poorly managed troughs, quietly destroys your economics without ever showing up on a growth chart. But here's the honest truth. A farmer can buy the best feed on the market and still produce disappointing birds. Because there is something even more fundamental than feed that most farmers dramatically underestimate. A broiler's body is approximately 65 to 70% water. Every biochemical reaction that builds muscle, every protein synthesis event, every enzyme activation depends on adequate hydration. Water is not a supplement to growth. Water is the medium through which growth happens. And yet, on farm after farm, water management is treated as an afterthought. Restricting water intake by just 10% can reduce feed intake by as much as 20%, which means a farmer blaming slow growth on poor feed quality may actually be watching the consequence of inadequate water and never making the connection. One poultry consultant investigated a farm losing nearly 300 grams per bird. The farmer had changed feeds 3 times, switched suppliers twice, and even suspected disease. The actual problem? The birds simply weren't drinking enough during the hottest hours of the day. The cause was straightforward. Water sitting in tanks exposed to direct sunlight reaches 35 to 40 degrees Celsius by midday in tropical climates. Broilers reduce water intake sharply when water is warm because it provides no cooling effect for a bird already fighting ambient heat. The result is a midday consumption crash. Birds quiet in the afternoon, feed intake falling, growth silently slowing. The farmer sees slow birds, but never sees the connection to afternoon water temperature. The fix? Shade your water storage. Flush your lines midday. A little insulation on an overhead tank can meaningfully change your afternoon consumption numbers and your weekly weight gain. Then there is water cleanliness. Biofilm, the near-invisible bacterial coating inside water lines and drinkers, reduces water flow, alters taste, and suppresses intake long before any visible illness appears. A flock can look completely healthy while poor water sanitation is quietly stealing 200 to 300 grams of final market weight per bird, week after week. On a flock of 1,000 birds, losing 300 grams per bird is 300 kilograms of saleable meat gone. Depending on your market price, that can erase a significant portion or all of your profit margin for that cycle. Flush your drinkers daily. Sanitize your lines between cycles. It is not optional. And if water is quietly this powerful, wait until you understand what is happening inside the air your birds are breathing. Imagine a room where the air is heavy and sharp. Your eyes water. There's a faint chemical smell you can just detect. You wouldn't eat well in that room. You wouldn't sleep well. You wouldn't feel like doing much of anything. Now imagine the broilers, and that room is the only environment they will ever know. That smell is ammonia. And here is where most farmers make a critical mistake. Many farmers think, if I can tolerate the smell, the birds can too. The reality is that birds are often suffering measurable growth losses long before the farmer notices anything unusual. Ammonia at 25 parts per million, a level most farmers describe as a little strong but acceptable, reduces average daily weight gain by up to 7%. At 50 parts per million, still not alarming to an accustomed nose, that loss climbs toward 15%. And at persistent elevated levels across a 6-week cycle, the weight loss compounds into a number that hits your bank account hard. On a flock of 1,000 birds, a 7% growth reduction doesn't sound dramatic, but translate that to kilograms at market, and depending on your price per kilogram, it can represent the difference between a profitable cycle and a break-even one, sometimes worse. Ammonia is generated by the breakdown of manure in wet, poorly managed litter, which means the real solution is not masking the smell, it is managing your litter so the problem never develops. Dry, loose, friable litter is your first line of defense. If you can squeeze a handful and it crumbles apart, your litter is doing its job. If it holds together in a wet ball, ammonia is almost certainly climbing. Heat stress works alongside ammonia to suppress growth from a different angle. When temperatures exceed 30 degrees Celsius, broilers begin panting, rapid, shallow breathing that prioritizes cooling over digestion. Feed intake drops 30 to 40% during the hottest parts of the day in a poorly ventilated house. If your house runs hot every afternoon from week 3 onward, you are losing growth every afternoon, silently, consistently. Ventilation is the tool that addresses ammonia, humidity, and heat simultaneously. Adequate airflow removes ammonia, dries the litter, and moderates temperature. Yet ventilation is consistently one of the most underinvested areas in small-scale operations. If you've been getting value from this video, now is a great time to subscribe if you haven't already. Every week we publish content built specifically for farmers who want real answers, not generic advice. Tap the subscribe button, then let's keep going. Because what comes next surprises almost every farmer who hears it. Here's a question. If 30 birds fit comfortably in a space and you put 45 in instead, what happens? Most farmers think more birds, same cost, more income. The math looks appealing, but inside that overcrowded house, something different is playing out. The dominant birds, heavier, more aggressive, get consistent access to feed and water. The smaller, more submissive birds access both intermittently. That difference accumulates day by day. By week 4, the top third of your flock may be hitting targets while the rest are creating the picture of an uneven, underperforming batch. This unevenness is not genetic. It is social. The same genetics that produce a uniform flock at correct density produce a chaotic, uneven flock when overcrowded. And uniformity matters to buyers as much as total weight. Overcrowding also multiplies every problem we've already discussed. More birds means more manure, more moisture, more ammonia, more heat. The ventilation that was adequate at proper density becomes completely overwhelmed at 30% overstocking. Every risk compounds. The standard for naturally ventilated houses sits at 8 to 10 birds per square meter. But even within that range, the lower end consistently outperforms the higher in individual bird weight, flock uniformity, and feed conversion. On a flock of 1,000 birds, reducing average weight by even 200 grams per bird through overcrowding stress means 200 kilograms of saleable meat lost. The cumulative reality of broiler production is this: a bird that is slightly cold, drinking slightly compromised water, breathing slightly elevated ammonia, and slightly overcrowded is not in crisis. It is simply growing slower than its genetics allow. Each factor alone might reduce growth by 3 to 5%. Together, compounding across 6 weeks, they explain the entire gap between our two farmers. There are two types of poultry farmers. One visits the chicken pen in the morning, tops up the feed, checks that water's flowing, and walks out satisfied. The other walks in and reads the room. They count birds clustered under the heater and immediately know whether it got cold overnight. They scan the litter near drinkers and spot a water line dripping before it becomes a litter problem. They listen because a healthy flock has a particular sound, and a stressed flock sounds different, and they have trained themselves to hear the difference. This observational practice requires no special equipment, it requires attention, and it is the single most reliable differentiator between farmers who consistently hit market weight and farmers who consistently fall short. Successful farmers weigh a random sample of birds twice a week. They compare those weights to the expected growth curve for their breed. When actual weight begins to diverge from expected weight, they investigate immediately, not at week 5 when it's too late to recover. A temperature problem caught on day 8 is correctable. The same problem discovered on day 20 has already cost hundreds of grams of potential growth that cannot be reclaimed. Feed requirements nearly double between week 1 and week 4. Farmers who set their feed level once and rarely adjust it are chronically underfeeding during the fastest growth phase. Feeder heights need to rise as birds grow. Trough level should match the bird's back height. A feeder set too low wastes feed and wets the litter. A feeder set too high suppresses intake. Litter management is the daily task that determines air quality for the entire flock. Good litter crumbles when you squeeze it. Wet, compacted litter generates ammonia, harbors pathogens, and causes painful footpad lesions that discourage birds from walking to feeders. Successful broiler farming is not about dramatic interventions. It is about consistent, small, daily decisions that prevent problems from developing in the first place. Now let's put it all together. 6 weeks. Here is what to watch for in each one. Week 1. The week of activation. Pre-warm your house before chicks arrive. Have feed and water in place. Target weight by day 7, 160 to 200 grams. Watch for huddling, slow feeding, or pasty vents. High variation in week 1 weights is always a red flag. Every problem corrected now is a problem that doesn't compound into week 4. Week 2. Growth accelerates sharply. Target 400 to 450 grams by day 14. Begin transitioning from chick drinkers to larger lines as birds grow. Reduce brooding heat gradually, roughly ½ degree Celsius per day. Confirm your feed transition plan is on schedule. Week 3. The middle chapter. Birds are eating aggressively. Target 900 grams to 1 kilogram by end of week 3. Litter begins to deteriorate faster now. Monitor closely and address wet patches immediately. Ammonia starts climbing in poorly ventilated houses this week. Heat stress becomes relevant in warmer climates. Week 4. The peak growth window. Birds can add 40 to 60 grams per day under good conditions. Target 1.4 to 1.6 kilograms by end of week 4. This is the week when accumulated management errors become undeniable. Uneven sizing now reflects the environment you provided, not the genetics you bought. Week 5. Feed conversion is at its most efficient. Target 2 to 2.2 kilograms. Any factor suppressing intake this week, heat, ammonia, crowding, is robbing you of your most cost-effective growth. A mismanaged week 5 can cost 200 grams of final weight per bird across your entire flock. Week 6. The final reckoning. Target 2.5 to 3 kilograms. Demands on your ventilation system are at their maximum. Do not relax management now. Birds ready for market walk confidently, show firm body condition, and have clean, dry feet. Uniformity across the flock is your report card for the previous 5 weeks. So, 2 farmers, same chicks, same day. 6 weeks later, completely different outcomes. Now you understand exactly why. One farmer got brooding temperature right from hour 1. He had clean water available on arrival. He transitioned feeds on schedule. He kept litter dry so ammonia never built. He stocked at the right density. He weighed birds twice a week and caught problems early. He shaded his water tank so afternoon consumption didn't crash. None of that required a special product. None of it required secret commercial knowledge. It required understanding what actually drives broiler growth, and then the discipline to manage it every single day. The other farmer wasn't careless. He simply focused on the visible, the feed brand, the chick quality, and missed the invisible. The cold nights in week 2, the water lines that weren't flushed, the litter going wet in the corners, the stocking density that was just slightly too high, the ventilation that was just slightly too low. None of those problems on their own were catastrophic, but compounding across 6 weeks, they added up to 30% slower growth and a flock that wasn't ready for market when it needed to be. That gap is not about genetics. It is not about secret products. It is about managing multiple factors correctly every day from the moment those chicks arrive at your gate. A backyard farmer with 200 birds who manages these factors correctly will consistently outperform a larger farmer who ignores them. Broilers do not care about the size of your operation. They respond to the quality of their environment. The farmer with the 3-kilogram birds at 6 weeks is not lucky. He is systematic. He is observant. And he understands that broiler success is built in small, daily decisions, not in one dramatic fix. Now you understand it too. Before you go, I want to hear from you. What has been your biggest challenge when raising broilers? Temperature, water management, feed quality, something you couldn't explain? Drop it in the comments below. I read every one, and your question might become our next video. If this video helped you, share it with another farmer who needs it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.